Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Rosenberg. I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank those who are in internet land. Thank you for cluing in to us. Today is a very important day because we're gathered to discuss our budget situation for the next year. But I'd like to start out, first of all, by thanking all of you for what was, in my mind, our best set of graduations ever. We graduated nearly 4,000 students just 2 weeks ago. And then in China, we graduated another record 240 students. We still have one graduation left, our College of Law. And I've never seen a set of graduations that have gone off as smoothly and as happily as were those 6 events. So I want to thank all of you for collaborating to make sure that our students not only could get a world's ahead education, but that those who were there could find a moment to indeed have a great celebration. I'm looking forward to our August graduation. It'll be the first graduation we've ever held in August, and it's evidence to the hard work that you're all doing, to the focus that you're putting on our students, and to the importance that you place on them getting their educations in a timely manner. So we have a lot to celebrate, and that's just one of the many milestones of our university. We're here to discuss a major issue, namely our budget. And how many of you were able to read or see the Miami Herald this morning? I'd be curious to know. And if you did, you saw that on the front page of the newspaper was an article about the serious cuts that are being now taken at the Dade County Public Schools, despite the heroic efforts of the school board and our superintendent, Alberto Carvalho. Over $100 million worth of cuts this year, ladies and gentlemen, on the heels of significant cuts over the last 5 years. And you probably have also seen, regretfully, that just one county up, 1,400 new teachers, probably of those, probably 15 to 18% of those teachers are graduates, are being released because of budget inadequacy in the Broward County public schools. 1,400. Now, I'd like to think that some of those individuals will get rehired, but truthfully, it's unbelievable that in this era we would be disinvesting in education as much as we are. And indeed, one of the things that you're going to see today in this conversation is a similar pattern of disinvestment or shrinkage, is the word that I'm using, as it relates to part of our budget. But I'm happy to tell you, on the other hand, that because of the decisions that you've made, that we've made as a community over the last few years, really beginning in 2007, that we are still on an upward trajectory, unbelievably, even in a context of a lot of uncertainty, even in a context of difficulty, even in a context of discomfort, even in a context of program shrinkage. And if you have any takeaway from this gathering today, it is that this budget that we're going to share with you in a moment really is a milestone budget. It's something that we have never seen before at our FIU. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is, for the first time ever, the amount of resources that we have available to us to run this great university is largely due to the tuition that we are collecting from our students. And as you know, I say periodically, every student counts. And now more so than ever, because we today, for this coming year, will now have more resources for educating our students, more resources for paying our salaries, more resources for underwriting the programs, the laboratories, the computers, the technology from our students than we get from the state of Florida. Truthfully, we had projected that this would happen, but we thought next year or the year after. But indeed, that moment has arrived. And in many respects, for us, it is a huge milestone because it does, and I want to say again, reinforce the fact that now more than ever, we have to pay attention to the needs of our students because they are now the largest shareholder as it relates to us getting our great work done. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that. I do want to say that we wouldn't be standing here today if it weren't for the great work of our government affairs team led by Vice President Steve Saul. Steve, are you here and is your team here? Could you please be acknowledged? I want to thank you. And I want you to know that, when the legislature's in session, I think many of you understand this, that if you're following when the legislature's in session, you sleep with one eye open. And I know when I was chancellor and actually was right in the middle of this day after day after day over those 60 days when this legislature's open, you sleep with both eyes open. But I can tell you that last week, our government affairs team was on point making calls to Dr. Jessel or to the provost at 11, 12, 1 a.m. in the morning. And what they were doing, what the advice that we got is, okay, in that last week, what your government affairs team does is you follow and harass members of a Dade legislative delegation so they understand not to forget us in that closed door when the stuff is really coming out. And so I want to thank our government affairs team. I want to thank the UFF. The UFF has been very helpful in making the case for why we have a valued and valuable product. I don't know whether Kathleen is here, or there's Kathleen. Would you please stand and be recognized? Kathleen Wilson, who has done a really great job of leading UFF to make a strong case for why higher education in our public university should be supported. Our Board of Governors has been incredible. A couple of members of our boards have direct personal relationships with senior legislators, with the governor, and I can tell you that they worked hard for us. So this wouldn't have happened without them. Student government, I don't know whether Student Government Association is here today. I know that we have new leadership that you'll be meeting, but certainly Elena Ramirez and CC Battle did an incredible job for us leading delegations of students. They're really our most effective advocates, and we never can forget that. And that's why we have to, and I know we will do right, continue to do right by them. And then, of course, finally is our legislative delegation. We've been blessed this year. It's really an unusual year for us. I think the number is, 7 or 8 now, Steve, of your graduates. 7 of your graduates are now legislators. Who'd have thunk that would have ever happened, And there are others up there from the Dade delegation who wish they were FIU graduates. I promise you, it's true. It's true. And because they know that what we're doing is critical for our community, they know that we make a difference, they know that this is an efficient and effective organization. And you can't say that much now about other public sector organizations, regrettably. This is not the era when public types are supported, but you're getting support from them too. I don't think I've ever seen a Dade delegation that was more unified and more understanding of how FIU needed to be helped. Now, we got to keep that alive, okay? And part of that is because you, as colleagues, have chosen, when you have the dialogue, to have an effective dialogue with those members of the Dade legislative delegation. And part of that is that they believe in what we're doing like you do. So I'm going through these thank yous because the truth of the matter is we had a pretty doggone good year under the circumstances. And that's what I want to talk about in the slides that we have. So the outline is we're going to spend a little bit of time on our education in general appropriations, talk about the reductions, because there have been reductions, I'm sorry to tell you. Talk a little bit about our budget for next year. We'll deal with state appropriations and the relationship between what we're getting from the state in terms of appropriations and tuition. Then we'll deal a little bit with what that means in terms of incremental tuition revenue. Then I know many of you have on your minds the issue of our retirement programs. I hope nobody's ready to retire today, tomorrow, or the next day. But, you know, I mean, one of the benefits of working at FIU is that we have some pretty good programs in place, particularly compared to what's going on out in the private sector. We are still making critical investments that I want to talk about, and then we'll just do a little bit with our public education capital outlay, the building money. So basically, here are the highlights. And I have the negatives, the first two line items. And that is, yes, we did take another major reduction in state appropriation, about $12 million. Now, we're not surprised by that. We knew that was coming, but that's there. We also saw eliminated from our budget the federal support that we had over the last 3 years for that came through the relief and stabilization money, roughly $14 million. So in essence, this year you were already starting from a roughly about a $25 million shortfall from last year. And but what's on the positive side? On the positive side, we did get support from the state to fund health insurance increases. You have a very good health insurance program. Health is a critical issue. And we also got support for space phase-ins. That's electric, all of the operation and maintenance. We also, ladies and gentlemen, had the legislature approved an 8% increase in base tuition and gave us authority for an additional 7% increase subject to the BOG's approval, the Board of Governors' approval, meaning that tuition will go up 7%, mandated by the legislature, and then, of course, we're going to go to the Board of Governors in just our Board of Trustees in just a couple of weeks and ask for another 7%. So we would have another year of a 15% tuition increase. We don't like that, but we know that our students come down on the side of quality. We know that this is going to help us to graduate in a more timely manner and to retain our students, and so therefore we're prepared to have that, the conversation for why the tuition increase needs to be what it is. It amounts to roughly, $175, $150 a semester, maybe a little bit more, and again, that's an investment that our students are going to be making to ensure that they continue to have a quality education. And then finally, I'm very happy to tell you that the legislature supported this year another $2 million incremental for our College of Medicine. So the good news is it's really a miracle College of Medicine, because over the last 4 or 5 years, as the state budget has shrunk, the legislature has maintained its commitment to our medical school and to the University of Central Florida's medical school. So we are on track with the LCME in terms of medical school accreditation. Again, that's testimony to the power of an idea and to the support that your community has for your new medical school, which is going to add immeasurably to the strength of our academic health center. So offsetting the bad news is some good news that really is really a highlight for us. Okay, what's happened? Let's just look backwards. I don't like to look backwards, but once in a while you have to look backwards to get a perspective. And let me just walk you through this. On the far left is that big blue bar. Everybody can see it. That's where we were in 2007 in terms of state appropriations. Everybody see that? How much is it? Can you read that? Roughly $225 million came from the state of Florida to underwrite our education programs. Where are we as we go into this new fiscal year. That little bar on the right, that little blue bar, is what's happened to your state budget, to your state appropriation. In essence, we're down to about $157 million, ladies and gentlemen. That's how much has been cut out of the state budget appropriated to our FIU since 2007, over the last 5 years. $71 million. So really you're dealing with, we've seen our state appropriation cut by a third. A little over a third. And I just want to say that I know that there's been a lot of pain in that. I know because we built programs that we had to disassemble. We've shrunk programs that we've wanted to grow. And there's a lot of pain out there as a consequence of that. So, but we've done it together, and frankly, there's been a lot of consensus around how we were going to do that. And let me tell you that this situation that you see in front of you is no different. It's no different than any other public university in the United States today, I promise you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So basically, this year, $157 million is appropriated, plus another $9 million in what we call pass-throughs, and that's covering the health insurance, covering PO&M, plant operation maintenance, as I mentioned. So the end result is that we've seen considerable shrinkage, and the end result is that today, if you look to your far right, you will see that we project to collect in FY 2011-12 more revenue from tuition than the state has appropriated. What are the numbers? We'll collect $174 million, that's what we project to collect, and the state will only be contributed $166 million. Juxtapose that against what you see, that's on the far right, that would be on your far left. Juxtapose that, that's on your far right. Juxtapose that against what's on your far left, when in 2007, we were only collecting $106 million from students on tuition. I really want that to sink in, because the future of this university, the truth of the matter is, rests with that gold bar on the right and not that blue bar on the left. And so if we're to prosper, if we're to maintain and enhance the quality, that gold bar is going to rise. And as it rises, the truth is, it carries with it a responsibility for us to do better and better by our students, who are now the main stakeholder, the main payer into this public university. And if each and every one of you remembers that and redoubles your efforts to help students, to listen to them. They don't want to pass, they just want fairness and consistency and respect, we're going to do fine. But each and every one of you in this room and out of this room has to commit to that. And I know that I can count on you for that, because I want to go back to the board next year and the year after and the year after that and see if we can continue to have increases so that we can show that we can improve quality with additional funding. And there will come a time, ladies and gentlemen, I hope not too soon, when there's going to be a lot of questions about this. All right? Because around this country, there is what is known as tuition exhaustion. And people are asking the questions, why is tuition continue to increase? I'd like for them not to ask that question here about your FIU. But the only way that can happen is if you redouble your efforts on behalf of our students. So, any questions or comments on that on this graph? It's important that, that you have a sense about it. Bruce?
Yes, sir. How much did we grow in terms of number of students and faculty and so forth?
Well, we're gonna share that in a minute, but basically our enrollment between 2007, 2008, and 2011 has grown roughly about 7,000 or 8,000 students, and the faculty size, regretfully, hasn't grown that rapidly because we've had a lot of replacements, and we've closed some programs. So we've held our own on faculty. But what I think is important here is that now we're finding resources to invest in advisors and in counselors and in support staff that we need in order to improve retention and graduation rates, which are critical indicators for the state legislature as to the investment that's being made. Okay, so the incremental tuition revenue begins to get at, in part, that question. But basically, you can see from this graph, I mean, the point of this graph is that higher enrollment and tuition rates, again, on your far right, the blue portion is what results from, for us, the higher tuition and the increased enrollment, roughly $21 million in additional revenue. And that $21 million makes a huge difference for us in the context of the first graph that I showed you of the significant reductions that we've had. And, you know, we've broken it down there. Undergraduate is roughly $12.8 million. Differential tuition alone is $5 million. So now we're getting into economies of scale that give us the ability to do things that, truthfully, we absolutely wouldn't be able to do were it not for the scale that we're taking on in order to build this university. Many of you have asked the question about retirement. We've tried to simplify this. Obviously, there's a little bit of change in how our retirement programs are being managed. We've been blessed for as long as I can remember by not having to pay into our retirement. It's really remarkable that we would have had a retirement program that we didn't have to share in paying into. This year, that changes. The State Bill 2100, the Senate Bill 2100, does require us to contribute 3% to the retirement system, and that begins to our retirement system, whichever we're in, and that begins on July 1st, 2011. And we are going to have a set of seminars and workshops for you, and I'll show, to answer your questions about that. But the end result is that we are going to be now paying in 3%. Now, the good news is about that is that it's not 5%, because the original proposal coming out of the legislature was that we would be contributing 5%. And partly as a result of the efforts of our Dade legislative delegation, Senator Ana Terry Flores and others, they managed to convince the powers that be that 5 was just too much. And so it's 3%. Now, truthfully, can't guarantee you that they won't come around next year with the same kind of proposal, but we've been really blessed over the last decades by not having to pay in. Today we have to, beginning on July 1, we have to pay in. So, but I'm happy to tell you that we did get it reduced from 5 to 3%. What are the changes in retirement? Well, first of all, let me just say that let me just take a moment. You can, if you can study this, that's fine. We have basically two different categories here. Those who are enrolled in the FRS prior to July 1 and those who are enrolled after. And the best way for me to describe this is that, yeah, some of the requirements change, but if you enrolled prior to July 1, 2011, it's still the high 5. It's you vest within 6 years. There are some changes in terms of retirement age and years of service requirements, and the drop accrual rate is still 6.5. Where the changes are is in the second column, in terms of if you enroll after July 1, 2011. It's still in many ways not as draconian as it could have been, folks. And so we're going to be recruiting a lot of people to this university over the next year or two, and I want to make sure that, because you're all messengers, I want to make sure that you understand what's happened here and what hasn't happened here, because there are a lot of myths out there. And we'll come back, and I'll ask Dr. Jessel in a minute during the question and answer period to spend some time on this. But the bottom line for us, those of us who are now employed here, is that we will be contributing 3% into our retirement plans. And of course, that will have an impact upon your bottom line. There are some, we are going to have a set of workshops. They'll be in English, they'll be in Spanish, they'll be in Creole, and both at the Medique campus and at the Biscayne Bay campus. And Japhus, I know, is going to be sending out, if he hasn't already, the schedule on that. Is that right? Immediately after the meeting, the schedule goes out. So we want to make sure you all have as much information as you possibly can about the changes that have occurred. The bottom line is it's not as bad as it could have been, and particularly for those who are already here. Now, what does all of this amount to? All this amounts to is that we've got roughly $340 million or so to operate the academic, the teaching and research side of the house on. And despite the reductions, we are still investing in high priority areas that we've decided upon through public fora that we've had, through the strategic planning process, and that the Board of Trustees has had vetted and the Board of Governors has had vetted. And I'll just simply say that those investments are in three strategic areas. First of all, in student instructional support. Second is in research and graduate education. And thirdly, in the area of compliance and support. And I'm happy to tell you that for this coming fiscal year, we will hire 80 new faculty. We will hire 32 new graduate teaching assistants over and above what we've had. And we will hire 85 new staff members, 18 advisors, 8 public safety officers, 44 academic support, and 15 non-academic support. And I want to ask you something. Where else in the country is this happening but right here? I don't know of any place. I don't know of any place. I can tell you that a lot of those individuals at the Dade County Public Schools and in the Broward County Public Schools are today looking at us and wondering if there's hope. And we are hope. This budget that you have in front of you is a budget of hope. And it's a milestone budget in that regard. For this year, we hired how many faculty, Mr. Prova? 64? 64 incremental faculty. Where else is that happening in this country? And that's on top of the faculty whom we replaced. So again, I think there's a very positive and hopeful story to tell, even in the context of the difficulty, and it's right here at your FIU. And then beyond that, of course, all you have to do is to try to drive around the north side of this campus, and you'll see that something is going on there, and indeed there will be new construction. At least 2 new buildings in the next 18 months are going to rise as a result of earlier PICO allocations, and we're expecting to get roughly $8 million in PICO again this year for our infrastructure and for our utilities. Now this is up for grabs right now. This part of the budget we know is being closely scrutinized by our governor. We don't want to lose this money. If we do, truthfully, we'll just come around and fight for it next year. but we did get allocated in what was otherwise a very difficult year in terms of infrastructure and capital funding, this nearly $8 million. So, where are we today? We have a milestone event occurring. More resources coming from our students than from the state. We have an unprecedented situation where even in the context of the difficulty, we are hiring in every domain. Instead of being in a fetal position and worrying about the sky is falling, we are aggressively moving ahead to make sure that we can meet the needs of our community, we can meet the needs of our faculty, we can meet the needs of our professional staff in a context of significant difficulty. And the truth of the matter is, we wouldn't be here today if you hadn't have all worked together to figure out how to make hard decisions a few years ago, which you did, and painful decisions, and then figure out a way to implement it, but at the same time, to offer a quality product in a very professional manner to a lot of people in this community who are dependent upon us. So that is the presentation. I'm happy to answer questions or to ask any of our vice presidents to answer the questions that they're in a better position to answer than I might be. I want to thank you for your time and attention. I want to tell you that I'm pumped about this coming year. I'm really pleased with where we are. I'm excited about all the new students coming in and the great educations that they're going to get. You're part of an organization that is worlds ahead. I hope you have pride in it, and I hope you have as much pride in it as I do. So thank you very much. I did want to thank Mariana Yurn and Lil Batista, both on the violin, and Gressley Sarjonce, who was on the piano. Let's make sure that they know how appreciative we are for their great music. And we're open now for questions. If you're in the internet world out there, we are taking questions at, what's the email? Which? pressmail@fiu.edu. So, comments, questions?
Very much, Mr. President. And I don't have a question. I just wanted to reiterate the sessions that are going to be going on.
Good.
Have knowledge of this. We'd like for you to come and get the same communication that we're giving to everyone, because we want to be able to communicate to others as they're adding to our community, and let you also credits for your presence in the classes. So there are several of them. If we should get full and need to add more, we'll certainly do that too.
So information is key here, and you're all ambassadors, and you'll have the opportunity to interview a lot of new people this year who are going to try to understand what we're up to, and I think you're, as a consequence of the briefing and the workshops, you'll be in a better position to do that. How are you?
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I understand the situation that we're going through, and
we should have given names. I'm sorry.
yeah, Urias
Okay,
Martinez
nice
from
to
the
see
mail
you.
room.
Good to see you.
Okay, some of the positions in the university are underpaid.
Yes.
Getting some of the description don't even match what we do. That's a big problem here. On top of that, I'm going to get more cuts from the state, getting 3% on my pocket to pay for my retirement. So that's means I'm going to have less money to take home. I'm going to keep doing the same work I'm doing. I'm asking you, do you think it's fair that what the university can do for us? I mean, you're talking about hiring a lot of people in the future. What about the people that have been here for so long, they get this place? I think with the something to take in consideration that we put a lot of effort to keep this institution the way it's run. And the second point is that I see through this campus some of the departments that they're not critically important for the university, but they put in a lot of resources, which to me doesn't make no sense.
Mm-hmm.
And they should take a look at it really heavy, because we should have more priorities. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yep.
if someone can do something outside cheaper with less cost, why will not take that? You know what I'm saying? FIU should have to look for critical departments that are critical to students and to the community. This is not a welfare, but at the same time, I think FIU has an obligation, an moral obligation, to keep employees with the reality or the economic reality that we live in now, meaning that the salary has to be adjusted to the reality. Otherwise, what's the point to work here? That's the point. Thank you.
Thank you for raising those questions. As I understand it, you're concerned that the current staff in many positions are not paid enough, and the work is increasing. On one hand, on the other, we're investing in departments that where the work perhaps could be performed externally. Is that correct? Okay. First of all, clearly we want our staff and our faculty to have a living wage. I mean, that's very, very important to us. And some of that is now in the hands of negotiation processes that are independent of specific decisions that we can make at a given time. Clearly, if you're doing work that is not in your job description, we're very grateful for that. And truthfully, it's hard for me to visualize a job description that probably doesn't have additional work involved with it. Does anybody here want to indicate that their job description is just fine and that they're not doing more than perhaps they were, and part of that will be our reality forever because it's a dynamic, growing institution. But I will ask Japheth Hardrick to do a review and to make sure that as closely as possible, your job description is consistent with the assignment that you have. And I want to thank you if you're going outside of your job description to do good things for this university. And I don't want anybody to feel that they shouldn't occasionally or daily do things that are outside of their job description, because the truth of the matter is this is a university community. It is one university. When people come into this university, it's FIU. It's not employee X or Professor Y. So I want to thank you for stretching, if indeed you're stretching. But we should try to approximate, no question. So we'll do a review on that. I would like to know if you feel that there are programs or units here that are extraneous. Because the truth of the matter is the point that you've just made is the point that our governor and that our Board of Trustees are making. Are there better ways to get the job done? Why are we doing the things the way we're doing them? It's the 21st century. You got all kinds of options. So I'd like for you to have the conversation directly with me or with Vice President Jessel about units that you feel the work could be done better elsewhere. I don't want to do that publicly here because the truth of the matter is it's one community and everybody's got an opinion. But if you feel strongly about that, we should know that because you're closer to the action most of the time than we are.
I think your transparency is excellent because it's nothing personal. We're talking about serious time here, and people are getting hurt, and we have to be responsible in where we allocate the resources. I'm a professional. No matter what I do here, and I can see it. I want the best for this university because I'm here. I don't care if people get mad, but it's the reality. I'm not going to go just because I don't want to piss somebody else. I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't work that way. I have to be true to myself and the reality that we live. The second point I wanted to tell you is we sort of tie down to this Aztec Union that doesn't represent us at all. It doesn't have no vitality. It doesn't have no representation. Why the employees here cannot represent themselves? I mean, it is embarrassing because they will say, lawyers are coming. What lawyers? What are you doing for us? Show me what you're doing for us. What base that you have? What are the numbers that you work with this administration? They don't say anything. It's kind of embarrassing because I'm not an ignorant person. I want to know what's going on with my future here. Otherwise, I can have both choices. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having the courage to speak your convictions. That's one thing that we are very proud of at FIU. And as it relates to union representation, I mean, union representation is a legitimate exercise here. It's legally identified and supported in state statute. So I'm not, we're going to work with the representation that we have, and we're going to do so professionally, and we expect that to be reciprocated. And truthfully, it has been, and I want to thank those who are involved in that for their professionalism. I appreciate the sentiment about speaking your mind. I'd like to think that all of you are willing to do that and to understand in a huge community like ours, you have the opportunity. Your advice isn't always going to be taken, but we are going to listen. And so thank you. I know that Dr. Jessel is itching to respond, but I'll take the next question. Comments, thoughts? Okay, we've got a couple of emails.
Audrey Johnson from the Division of Student Affairs wants to know if it's mandatory for students to contribute to the FRS or if you can opt out.
For students,
Sorry, for employees, yes, to contribute to their pension, or can they opt out?
Dr. Jessel will get to give the good news.
The contribution of 3% applies to all employees on all retirement plans. That would be the FRS pension plan, the FRS investment plan, and the State University System 403B program. The only exception is if you are already on the drop program by July 1st, you would not have to make a contribution because your retirement benefits at that point have already been established. So unfortunately, it is not an option for employees. They do not have the ability to opt out. The total contribution remains the same. It's just that the employee pays 3%, with the state paying the difference.
Really, there's a related question here about if you already pay more than 3%, is that an additional 3% now?
Yes, it would be the 3% associated with the employer's component, and you could still continue up to the maximum allowed by law on the employee's voluntary contributions. So the employee's voluntary contributions do not substitute for the required 3%. Oh, that's right. They could drop their supplemental, but it's not a substitute. Okay, it's not a substitute.
And I think this is why, there's a lot of technical questions involved, and this is why Human Resources is going to be doing the workshop, so you're able to take some time and really understand what this means. You have some choices, whether it's FRS or optional retirement, but this 3% is not a choice. And let's hope this is where it ends, not where it begins. Right, Al? Yes.
El
Panye.
Panye Hudson. I'd like to elaborate on what Dr. Jessel presented concerning those members that are in DROP. Members participating in the DROP program and reemployed retirees are not allowed to renew membership. They will not be required to make the 3% contribution. So those that are currently in DROP or those that are going to become DROP participants.
Thank you, El Panye. Yes, sir. Please use the mic so others can hear.
Good afternoon. Jose Rodriguez, the only one at FIU. My question is regarding the, I guess our plan, our budget planning. It turned out really well for us to plan 3 years in advance Do we have something like that in mind? What can you tell us about, I guess, the future? I mean, this is obvious. We've all known this reality was coming sooner or later, but I guess what are we looking forward to in the next kind of fiscal years, and what are we hoping to do to maybe we've done like we did before, planning budget cuts for 3 years or however it is that we were doing it. If you could speak a little bit more about that.
Okay, just first of all, let me say that the Board of Trustees has approved a very aggressive strategic plan. It's a 5-year plan, and we're serious about executing on that plan. And that's why we had a public meeting on that a couple of, well, actually, about 2 months ago now. And so in general, the conceptual overview for your FIU is in that strategic plan for the next 5 years. And that calls for significant growth and significant hiring. And again, you will find very few universities that are aggressively facing forward like we are. But Dr. Jessa will talk about the specifics, Jose, as it relates to the budget dynamics.
Jose, the president is absolutely correct. We do have a plan in place that is very much aligned with the strategic plan of the university. As we look to the next couple of years, we know even for the current year, our expenditures are a little bit higher than the total levels of revenues that are coming in from the current year. And we are using some of our carry forward and reserves to cover that. As we look to next year, and the hope is that we are not going to have any meaningful reductions. I think we're seeing some indications that we're probably near the bottom with respect to the declines in appropriations. I'm not a fortune teller, and the news that we receive almost daily is very much mixed. This morning you had some very good information on job reports, but you also had some more bad news on the housing sales. So it's hard to say exactly where we are in the economy, but we do believe that within reasonable estimates of reductions for next year and the year after, that the additional tuition revenues coming in will be able to support that. So right now, we're not planning a program of more reductions beyond those that have already been completed as part of the 3-year budget process. This year was the smallest reduction of the 3-year plan, and that of course was intentional at the time that plan was developed. This means, however, that we are going to have to watch very, very carefully over the next few months the economic reports, particularly the estimates of general revenue for the state, the changes in the Medicaid programs throughout the country and what that means to the state, as well as changes in property values that is so important for the K-12 sector. So yes, we are monitoring the situation. We do have some contingencies in place with respect to some additional reasonable reductions moving forward, but we are very much aligned with the strategic plan on a both 5-year perspective that was very well defined, but also, and perhaps even more importantly, looking at it over 10 years as we see the increase in students, faculty, and staff growing over that period.
The President asked me to take the opportunity of this forum to just highlight a few of the points that are in the strategic plan, because as he mentioned, we have had a number of presentations on it, but looking out at the audience, different forums attract different people, and so I know that a number of you probably have not heard as much about the strategic plan. There are a couple of points that are very essential in it. One that I think everybody is well aware of is the commitment to increase access by adding 2,000 new students a year. But we're really primarily in that's an entrance measure. What we're really interested in, of course, is the exit measures. And so we want to know how well our students are completing, being retained, and graduating, and that's where we're putting a lot of our emphasis. That's our main focus in that strategic plan, are ways in which we can improve the student experience here. What we've been doing, and we're actually a few years ahead of it with the President's commitment to focusing on the student, but as the president mentioned, if you look at the charts for any other university in the country, you'll see the same pattern where there's a shift from state funding to the students funding it themselves. And so recognizing that, we know that as the students are funding so much more of their education themselves, we have to put forth renewed efforts to make sure that they're successful. And so we've put forth we have plans in place for a very aggressive approach at enhancing the retention and graduation of the students. So those are components of the strategic plan. Others that are important to reiterate is that we've made the commitment, even with the growth in students, is we're not going to change the student-faculty ratio. And as you saw from the slide earlier, along with the growth in the faculty, there was virtually an equivalent growth in the support staff, because we know that the community is made up of the students, the faculty, and the staff. And so the support staff are going to be growing at the same rate as the faculty are growing. So as we looked at the dollar amounts that we need to commit for each of these activities, as well as that are the ones that are going to support the 4 themes of our strategic plan in the arts and environment, international, global, and in our health areas. All of those components have been put into the strategic plan, and we do, as Vice President Jessel pointed out, if we don't have additional legislative cuts, we don't have them beyond this year, and the amount that we had this year, again, we were able to predict fairly correctly. So this amount that we were reduced this year was not a surprise. It was kind of what we planned. Now we'll see whether our plans are really valid as we go forward. If as the next year comes along, if we don't have additional cuts, then our 5-year plan with all those pieces in place that is on track to being successful.
Ruth? Does everybody know Ruth Hamilton? Runs a Grams. Woo! Give it up for Ruth.
Thank you. Is it possible for you to share with us the fundraising or the campaign for FIU, where we are with that?
Is Mr. Lippman here? No, he couldn't be here this afternoon. I'm assuming he's out fundraising. We have a very aggressive goal for this year of about $57 million. And we're not as close as I'd like to be. We're not as near to that target as I would like to be. Our deans have done a great job of working with members of the community. We have a number of gifts that we're on the cusp of getting signed. And we'll know in about 3 weeks as to whether they're going to come in. But our $750 million goal is still there. Vice President Lippman is now working on the faculty campaign, and I believe there is a faculty advisory group who is spending some time with him, and faculty and staff advisory group, and you will be hearing from him. Now, clearly, if we're to go to the next level, it's going to depend as much upon private philanthropy as it will upon student and state contributions. And so we're in the process now of spending some time on organizational issues within advancement. It's a really good unit. It's got to get a lot better, and Vice President Lippman is doing that. I'm spending a lot of time with donors, but donors right now are being very careful because they're just like you. If you had net worth, it shrunk. And your donors' net worth has shrunk, and they're being very, very careful with their investments. So, but I think we're going to have a very good year, probably not as good as I wanted to have and I expect to have, but I'm glad you asked. And if anybody's would like to write a check today, we did have a lot of success on our first-generation matching grant campaign, and I'm confident that we're at or near our target on that, which is important for student scholarships. And clearly, if this economy continues to creep along, we're going to have to spend a lot more time on scholarship funding for our students as well, because we're putting out now nearly $250 million annually in financial aid of all kinds for our students. So there's a lot of need out there, ladies and gentlemen. We will start our United Way campaign in the fall. We did hit our target last year, and I want to thank you for that. United Way is very gratified that you stepped up, even in this time of difficulty, to help members of the community with their needs. So you know, there are plenty of opportunities to give. There are plenty of opportunities to get. You're all ambassadors for FIU. If you know individuals who want to help, I would ask you to let us know, please. Is there anything else, Mydell?
Yes, there's a second question from Audrey Johnson. She wants to know how faculty and staff are going to be held accountable in ensuring that students will get their fairness, consistency, and respect now that they're our largest shareholder.
Well, I'd like to think, truthfully, ladies and gentlemen, that your professionalism will hold you accountable. I would like to think that the purposefulness of being here, of working in this incredible place, would be sufficient to encourage you to go to the next level. I would like to think that the external environment and all the difficulties out there would be enough of a message to us that would motivate us to redouble our efforts. I would like to think that we could rely upon your, if you will, accountability in your respective units to make sure that everybody is being treated well, not just students. Clearly, the provost is spending a lot of time with the faculty on evaluating faculty, not just on their creativity and on their research, but on their responsiveness to students and on the quality in the classroom. We could probably improve in measures of measuring that quality. Matter of fact, we're going to be asked to improve on how we measure learning effectiveness through the SACS process and through our accreditation process. But the truth of the matter is, the key is you. If you see something that you don't like, you need to tell your peer that this is not the way students should be treated or other colleagues should be treated. You are our agents of accountability. This is not an organization that is rigidly a vertical command and control organization. I don't think any of you want that. Most of you don't want it. Some of you might, but and I hope that you're getting enough of that. I'd like to think that we're evaluating based upon assignment. I'd like to think that everybody understands what their assignment is based upon a job description that is fair and appropriate, and that most of all, faculty are doing their job. I have 2 kids here at FIU, and I can tell you the truth is this place works pretty well for them. And I'd like to think that that's a function of the fact that they're students, not that it's a function of their last name's Rosenberg. And I would be disappointed if that were the case, honestly. And my instinct is that in most instances, it's not the case. It's because students are getting good treatment. But if there are instances where the supervisor is not paying attention or not willing to do anything, then I ask you to go to the next level of responsibility, whether it's a dean or a unit head, and make sure they know about it. And if they're ignoring you, I want to hear about it. I want to hear about it because it's not acceptable to me. So I mean, but in the end, we have got to function as the most highly regarded professional public institution or private institution in this state. And if we do, we're going to be fine. But that means each of us, me, you, have to redouble our efforts there. And if you're deficient, sooner or later, that is going to hurt the institution, and it most certainly will hurt you. I'd like to think that that weren't the case, but you know, there is accountability. So, any other thoughts or comments? Good and welfare of the order. Is Larry Martinez here? Larry Martinez sent me some good news today, and I want to share it with you to conclude. Larry Martinez is the director of our international programs working for Dean Robertson. And I just got the great news that he has found a way to get 5 of our students onto summer fellowships in Spain, working for, of all companies, Heineken. And I'm really excited about that because clearly we want our students to have great opportunities, not just in the classroom or out of the classroom here on campus or at Biscayne Bay or at one of our other sites. But we want them to have good opportunities as a result of the efforts that you make. So I want to thank Larry. I'm anxious to hear about the experience that our 5 students have. I want to thank you for being here. We're going to hang around a little bit if you have questions that you didn't want to ask publicly or comments that you didn't want to make publicly. My whole team is going to be here. The deans will be here. I see a couple of deans here. Could I ask the deans to stand up for a minute? So Dean Furton, Dean Robertson, Mayor Moran, O'Shea, Delia Garcia, Dean Acosta was here. He's in the back. They're going to stay here too. So if you have questions you want to raise with them, if you have questions that you want to raise with them, or the athletic director, he's not getting off so easy either. He'll be here as well. So thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate the fact that we're all at FIU. Thank you.